You want to win in college basketball? You got to make your threes, and there's some new Tar Heels in town who can really knock them down.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for making us your first listener watch to get your Wednesday going the right way. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. I want to welcome all our everydayers, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and of course our insiders as well. Glad you're all here. Here's what's happening on today's show. As I record this, by the way, on Tuesday night, there's supposed to be a really bad storm coming in. So I'm trying to get this going before my internet maybe gives out. You just never know. Welcome to living in the Midwest of America. That's my life. All right. One of the things I want to do this summer is kind of go through a series where I look back at some of the issues that Carolina had that made last year so topsy-turvy. I've got a whole list that I made right at the end of the year. Like I remember where I was. It was Selection Sunday. I was sitting in an airport and I made a list on my phone. I mean, it's probably 10, 11, 12 deep of just issues Carolina had. And so one of the things I want to start doing is unpacking those and how Carolina can fix them this season ahead. So the first one of those I want to get to is the ability to make the three-point shot. When you look back at Carolina's season team average last year, it was actually good. But for a vast majority of the middle part of the season, man, there were struggles and issues. So it is us worth diving into. And it's such a critically important stat in modern college basketball. And so what I want to look at is who's going to do that this year? Who's going to take the reins? Because RJ Davis is out the door. And then I want to look back at what has the success or lack thereof been for Carolina from beyond the arc in the last couple of years. And then we're going to wrap the show by talking about ESPN and their FPI has released its win-loss total projections for football teams for this upcoming season. I got to tell you, even with the uncertainty of this year's new team and new staff, I think the Tar Heels can get past their projections. So we'll get to that. All right, so here we go. Carolina's ability or inability to make threes successfully has played a massive role in determining their success over the course of the last 6 seasons. So my question is, what is this year going to look like? In segment 2, again, we're going to look back at those past 6 years. It's really intriguing. But here's the goal. If you want to say, what is one thing I can point to as helping Carolina be successful in the 2025-26 season, it is this. Hit at least 35% of your threes as a team. And not only has this proven true for Carolina in recent years, again, we'll look at that in the second segment, but one of the, me, Mr. Stathead, I go through and I've looked at things that make up the DNA of national champions. Since the tournament expanded back in the mid-'80s, every national champion has had at least 33% as a team. And but I think it's like 6 of them. I'm not in like NCAA tournament mode, but if my memory is with me, all but 6 of the national champions in that time, not since the tournament expanded, because that was before the three-point shot came in. It's since the three-point shot came in, every national champion. It's like 6 of them. Everybody else, those are the outliers. Every other national champion has hit 35% or better from beyond the arc. So it's a Carolina goal. It's a national champion goal. 35% is the aim. So what is Carolina's personnel going to look like from beyond the arc this season? Great question. I've kind of broken it down into returners, transfers, international, and freshmen. With the returners, the only person that's really worth mentioning is Seth Trimble, because the only other returners are James Brown, who, not really a three-point shooter, and then Zayden High, who's had a year gap since his freshman year. And he's somebody I'll talk about in just a second, but I'm not going to talk about him in terms of what he did last year because he didn't do anything last year. Seth, though, last season, this number might be shocking to you, hit 26.6% of his threes on 2.8 attempts a game. shocking to you because you probably knew it was low, but maybe didn't realize it was that low. I didn't remember that it was that low, and it's only been like 2 months since the season ended. But here's the thing for Seth. Prior to his head injury, which he himself has said, like, I couldn't get back going after that, he was shooting 38.5% from beyond the arc before that. Reminder, in his sophomore year, he hit 41.9% of his threes. I'm inclined to believe that sophomore Seth and pre-injury junior Seth is who he is as a three-point shooter, not the season-long 26.6% from last year. Now, is he 40% every year? I don't know, but I think it's reasonable for us to expect that a healthy Seth will shoot 35 to 38% from three. Not on necessarily high volume, but on the threes he does take, I think that's what he'll knock down. So there's that. Then we look to the transfers, and there's a bunch of those, obviously, but the key guys we'll look at here, Kyan Evans, Henri Veesaar, Jarin Stevenson, Jonathan Powell, Jaden Young. For Kyan Evans, let me remind you that at Colorado State last year, he hit 44.6% of his threes on 4.4 attempts a game. So it's not like he's not getting them up there. Boy, he's getting them up. And it's not like that was a one-year anomaly. For his career at Colorado State in his 2 years, he shot 42.7% from beyond the arc. So holy smokes, that's great. Henri Veesaar, his season this year at Arizona, 32.7% on 1.3 attempts per game. That's not a phenomenal average, but reminder, this is your center. This is your big. If he can step out occasionally and hit them at least at a respectable level, great. Jarin Stevenson, this is the one that I think Carolina really needs to take a massive step forward. This year at Bama, hit just 30.7% on 2.7 attempts a game. His freshman year at Alabama, I think it was like 31%. So really need Jarin to take a step forward in his three-point shooting. Maybe a change of scenery, getting back home will do that for him. Jonathan Powell, right on track with that 35% goal that we're looking at. 35.2% this year in his freshman year at West Virginia on 5.7 attempts a game. So he shot at an even higher volume than did Kyan Evans and hit 35% of them. That's really good. And then Jaden Young, who's had 2 years of college, shot just 29.6 last year at Virginia Tech, 4.8 attempts a game. It's a lot of attempts for somebody not hitting a bunch of them. He was better his freshman year at 37.5%, but much lower on attempts. And then international, obviously the lone guy there is Luka Bogavac. Oh my goodness, this dude. And remember, the competition level he's playing against is higher than, or at least grown men, right? This season for SC Derby, he shot 39.9% on 5.3 attempts per game. So that's just shy of Kyan Evans' percentage on more attempts per game. Wow. And as a pro, 37.4% for in his 4 professional career seasons. So Luka, man, can light it up and needs to light it up. Carolina needs him to do so from the wing. And then with the freshmen, with Caleb Wilson, Derek Dixon, Isaiah Dennis, who, by the way, are all on campus now. I saw a picture Caleb Wilson put up from his Instagram with the 3 of them standing there. It looked like they had like freshman orientation badges on. Pretty neat stuff. Caleb had a silly look on his face. Love it. It's really hard to know. Like, sure, you see their numbers from from high school and from EYBL and stuff like that, and it's great, whatever. But it just, you don't know how it's going to project. Derek Dixon comes in with a very high reputation as a shooter. So hopefully that will transfer over. Caleb Wilson can knock them down and does at times. I would imagine he will be a like medium volume shooter and hopefully can fill it up pretty well. So that's all probably, essentially the contributors we're looking at. So the question is then, how does Carolina get to 35%? Obviously, there are going to be guys that take more shots and are on the floor more than others. Of my projected starters, which is Kyan Evans, Seth Trimble, Luka Bogavac, Caleb Wilson, and Henri Veesaar, you can quibble with me on that, fine, great. But that's my projected starters. Of them, the clear and obvious thing is that Kyan Evans and Luka Bogavac have to take the vast majority of the threes. They are both players that not only can and need to hit 35%, they could both hit 40% of their threes, and that's not crazy. Because when you have one guy doing that, takes pressure off the other guy, takes attention off the other guy, and then they're both doing it. And then past that, if Seth Trimble can get back to pre-injury Seth and sophomore Seth, again, not a massively high volume, but you think that he should be able to fill it up. Again, my projection was like 35 to 38%. Caleb, again, we'll see with him, but if he could do it at a decent clip, and same with Veesaar, he needs to take them when he's open and out there, but doesn't need to be a high volume. And then off the bench, again, Jaden Young, Jarin Stevenson, we'll see if he can take a step forward. But I think the key three guys you probably want off the bench taking those threes are Jonathan Powell, definitely, Derek Dixon, if it translates, which hopefully it will, and then Zayden High. He can knock them down. I've seen some recent footage of him knocking them down really well. And so that's what you're looking at. Can Carolina get to that 35% or above? I really think so. But again, it's about the right guys taking the right amount of threes. I'd even be fine with Kyan and Luka dropping down to 37, 38%, but it means they're taking a higher volume of Carolina's threes, right? Does that make sense? Yes, absolutely it does. So that's what I'm looking at. I'd love to hear from you, though. What do you think about Carolina and their three-point potential this year? Can they get to 35% or above, or do you think it's going to be a struggle? Well, interestingly, we now have 40 seasons worth of three-point data on North Carolina, but the last 6 in particular have been really telling and really up and down, and the three-point percentage has been what's helped determine Carolina's success or lack thereof. We'll unpack that in just a second. Right after I tell you about Monarch Money, do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out and online shopping and entertainment? It's really easy to lose track of it all, especially in the summer, man. We're just off traveling and getting whatever, it flies by. Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO giving you full visibility of and control over all of your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center where you can track your accounts, your investments, and your spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you actually start building wealth for yourself and your family and hopefully future generations. And instead of juggling multiple apps, like having a whole folder with a bunch of stuff open on your phone, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, even plan long-term goals. I love that one-stop shopping. So join us. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Again, that's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off your first year. All right, we've just been unpacking what Carolina needs to do this season from beyond the arc to be successful. And here's why I think this stat in particular is so critical for the Tar Heels' success. You know me, I'm a chart guy. I have charted every year of Carolina's three-point shooting. Carolina's got it in their official record books too. You can go check it out. But what's interesting is following the conclusion of last year, we now have 40 seasons worth of data of three-point shooting. Obviously, there are different depths. The three-point line has gone back over the years and different things like that. But what you need to know is that there's data every season going back to 1986-87. And there's one outlier from the 82-83 season where it was like a trial run before that, and then a couple-year gap, and then 87. Every year since then, though, there has been three-point activity. Here's what's really interesting about Carolina and three-point shooting. In those 40 seasons, 4 decades worth of three-point shooting, they've shot below 33%, which, as I said, is the minimum if you want to be a national championship team. Below 33%, you're out. They've fallen below that threshold only 6 times in that 4-decade span. But what's interesting is all 6 of those have occurred since the 2009-2010 season. Let's take it a step further. Carolina has shot below 32% only 3 times in the history of Carolina basketball. But all 3 of those have come since 2019-20, the Cole Anthony season, which means that Carolina has been below 32% in 3 of their past 6 seasons. That's not good. That sounds negative, and in particular, probably about Coach Davis's tenure. But here's what you need to hear me say. Of those 3 seasons below 32%, 2 of them were Coach Williams' final 2 years. So only one of those below 32% is attributed to Hubert Davis. In fact, on the flip of that, of Coach Davis's 4 seasons, the Tar Heels have been 35% plus in 3 of his 4 years. That's really, really good, and that's what you need, and that's what you're looking for. So really good for Hubert Davis. But let me say this. Last year, while it wound up finishing higher at 35.6%, which is the 3rd highest of the Coach Davis tenure, which is great that high a shooting is the 3rd lowest of his tenure. But it didn't look like it was going to get that high all season long. I'll tell you what I mean. Carolina had a nice start last year. Through 7 games, they shot 37.7% beyond the arc. They hit at least 30% of their threes in all 7 of those games, and they hit 38% or better in 4 of the 7. But then it really fell off. After 15 games, they had fallen to 31.4% on the season. So that means in those 8 games, games 8 to 15, they shot 26.6%. They were under 20% twice, under 30% 5 times, and they never hit 36%. They were under 36% in all 8 of those games. They were up and down from game 16 through 20, but they did bump their season average from 31.4 up to 32.1%. But then they took off. Over the final 15 games of the season, games 23 to 37, Carolina took that average from 32.1% up to 35.6% as a team. What? Why? How did that happen? Well, over that stretch, the final 15 games, the Tar Heels shot a blistering 40.8% as a team. That's insane. You might have felt that, like, it feels like the Tar Heels are shooting better now. Well, boy, were they. A lot of that was honestly Jalen Withers coming alive. And frankly, it would have been even better than that. The only problem was 2 of their final 3 games, Duke in the ACC tournament, they shot only 17.6%. And that was the game they almost won, the free throw violation game. And in their season-ending loss to Ole Miss in the first round of the NCAA tournament, shot just 20%. With the game, that San Diego State game sandwiched in between, where they went 58.3 beyond the arc. So kind of a weird ending. But in those 15 games to wrap the season, they shot over 50% 4 times from beyond the arc. They were over 40% 8 times, and they were over 35% 11 of those 15 games. That's phenomenal stuff from the Tar Heels. Such consistency. But here's what's interesting. In those final 15 games last year, Carolina went 10-5. When they were 35% or better, they were 10-1. That lone loss being the game at Duke. But in the games, those 4 games where they shot under 35% down the stretch, they were 0-4. That's the game at Clemson, this regular season finale hosting Duke, that Duke ACC tournament game, and the Ole Miss NCAA tournament game. So proving yet again, Carolina was phenomenal down the stretch of the season from beyond the arc. But man, there was a time in the midst of the season, in the middle of the season, where it was like, this is one of the worst 3-point shooting teams Carolina has ever had. Like, statistically speaking, not just eye test. Statistics tell you that. Even though Coach Davis kept saying, I'm telling you this team's better. And they finally proved it, man. The backstretch of the season was phenomenal. But those games where they couldn't get it going down the stretch, it proved to be their undoing. All that to say, the Tar Heels, to be successful, have to make threes at a high level. Again, look how different the closing stretch was when they hit from outside versus when they didn't. And again, the past 6 seasons, remember I told you, 3 of them have been 35% or better. 3 of them have been sub 32%. Listen to how different those seasons have been in terms of results. In the 3 years of 35% or better from beyond the arc, one of those was 2022, where they were the national runner-up, ended Coach K's career. 2024, where they won the ACC regular season, they were a 1 seed. 2025, this year, obviously a very up and down year, but they did make the tournament, won the play-in game, whatever. And then the 3 years where they were sub 32%, the first of those was 2020. It was the COVID year, but they would not have made the NCAA tournament had it happened. And by the way, that season was the lowest Carolina 3-point shooting percentage as a team ever at 30.4%. Then the very next year, Coach Williams last year was 31.8%. They lost in the first round to Wisconsin. You'll recall that was just a weird year where teams weren't, scheduling games, all that stuff, whatever. That was the only season in Coach Williams' storied career to lose in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And then the third season in the past 6 where they shot under 32% from beyond the arc was 2023, where again they missed the tournament altogether. So all of that to say, Carolina's success or lack thereof is in large part going to be dictated by how well they shoot from beyond the arc this season. And again, what we're looking for is 35% or better, means success or has done so in the past 6 years. 32% or less, no bueno. 2 of those 3 years, they've missed the tournament. If they're in between 33 or 34%, we'll see what happens. But it's nice to have those demarcation lines of 32% down, 35% up. That's what I'm looking for. That's what you should be looking for this season. Let me know. Do you think Carolina can get there to that 35%? All right, let's switch from the basketball court to the football field, where ESPN has released their win-loss totals based on FPI for the football season. And Carolina, I'm telling you right now, is going to beat their projection in large part due to a very favorable schedule. We'll wrap the show talking about that in just a second. ESPN's win-loss totals based on FPI are now out. Carolina, as far as ACC standings, is tied for 6th with Louisville in terms of win-loss. They are at 6.7 wins to 5.3 losses. And by the way, for what it's worth, and as a reminder, FanDuel has Carolina's win total over-under set at 7.5 wins, so about a win higher than FPI suggests. So what I want to figure out is this. Can Carolina beat this 6.7 wins projection from ESPN's FPI? Well, let's look at the schedule where things play out this way. In terms of the 8 ACC games, the only ACC team Carolina plays that has a higher win projection from ESPN's FPI is Clemson, and that game's at Keenan. Of the other 7 ACC schools, Carolina faces it's actually 3 straight weeks where they're at Syracuse, hosting Stanford, at Wake. Those 3 teams are the 3 lowest ACC teams, 15, 16, and 17, in this FPI win projections. Stanford 15th at 4.7 wins, Wake 4.7 wins, and Cuse 4.6 wins. So that's 3 of Carolina's 8 ACC games. And then of the other 4, Virginia, Cal, Duke, and NC State, they're all just right behind Carolina, all with just north of 6 projected wins as well. How's that for interesting? Of the 4 non-conference games, Carolina has 2 games against Big 12 schools, TCU and UCF. TCU at home, UCF down in Orlando. Those teams both have a slightly higher win projection than Carolina. It's in the 7s. What was it? I wrote them down. TCU 7.2, UCF also 7.2. Again, Carolina 6.7. So they both have a higher win projection, but similar to the Clemson game, Carolina hosts TCU to kick the season off, and they do, though, have to go on the road to face UCF. And then the other 2 non-con games are an FCS school in Richmond and Charlotte, who's projected at not a high wins total. Let me go back to it, 4.3 for Charlotte there. So as I look at that and say, okay, what can Carolina do? What is their potential record based on this ESPN FPI, and could they get there? Well, non-conference games. And it's one of those seasons where it's the 4 non-con games are all up front, followed by 8 straight conference games. In those games, Carolina absolutely will beat Richmond and Charlotte. So there's 2-0. And let's say they split with TCU and UCF, maybe beat TCU at home, lose to UCF on the road. That's a 3-1 record against your non-con, maybe 2-2 at worst if you lose to the 2 Big 12 teams. Whatever. How about the ACC games? Well, let's say Carolina loses to Clemson, who's projected to have a higher win total. Okay? Let's say then that Carolina goes 3-0, they darn well better against that bottom 3 that we talked about of Syracuse, Stanford, and Wake. And then those 4 teams just below Carolina in FPI win projections, again, that's Virginia, Cal, Duke, and NC State. Let's say, just for the sake of the argument, Carolina splits with them at 2-2. If everything happens that way, 3-1 in non-con, 0-1 versus Clemson, 3-0 against the bottom 3, 2-2 against those middle 4, That's an 8-4 record, which means you've jumped that win total projection by like a game and a half. Let's say though, let's say you lose to both TCU and UCF. That's still 7-5, which beats that projection. Let's say you do go 3-1 in non-con, but you go 1-3 against those 4 teams right in Carolina's vicinity of Virginia, Cal, Duke, and State. Remember that Cal game is on the road. You're still at 7-5. Let's say though, go with me here. Let's say you go 3-1 in non-con, and you go 3-1 against those 4 teams that are in Carolina's vicinity, Virginia, Cal, Duke, and State. Let's say you go 3-1 there. Now you're looking at 9-3 in the regular season. I'm just saying, when I look at this schedule, even though, yes, it's a brand new regime, brand new talent, all of that being true, I look at the ACC, I look at who Carolina's playing, and it just screams to me, yeah, they can get to 6.7 win. Like every model I'm looking at there, you get to 7, 8, or 9 wins. Not like going under that 6.7 projection. Like, let's say you get 6 wins. Let's say you beat Richmond and Charlotte, lose to TCU, lose to UCF, lose to Clemson. And then that leaves Syracuse, Stanford, Wake, Virginia, Cal, Duke, and State. That means that you only win 4 of those 7 games to get to 6 of Q, Stanford, and Wake, Virginia, Cal, Duke, State. So that's like maybe you beat Q, Stanford, and Wake, and you beat Virginia, but you lose to Cal, Duke, and State. I just, none of that seems to make sense to me. I really feel like Carolina's going to blow by this projection. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Do you think 7, 8, 9, that makes sense to me? Does it make sense to you? There's a few other projections that FPI has as well, including like winning out the season. Carolina has 0.1% chance to do that, but the others are 6 wins, win the conference, playoff percentage, make the national championship game, win the national championship game. Just germane to our conversation here of getting to 6 wins, Carolina's got a 72.7% chance. I mean, after that, it's just one more win, and you've beaten FPI's projection here. So it seems like Carolina should get to this. Again, I'd love to know your thoughts. Can Tar Heels get at least 7 wins and get past this? I sure think so. Let me know. One final thing, Carolina women's basketball got another commitment on Tuesday, and it's funny because literally on Friday, the women's team announced their official roster. Like literally Friday the 13th. Maybe that was the problem, is that was when it was released. They said, hey, here's our team. And then on Tuesday, they pick up a commitment from Russian wing Elizaveta Astakova. Elizaveta Astakova. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. I think it's the Russian version of Elizabeth, Elizaveta, right? And anyway, pretty cool. She's a wing. More of a depth piece for the team, but great to just keep adding pieces to the team. Really excited for this year for Coach Banghart and company. As JC Fox said in Locked On Discord, Elizaveta coming over from Russia with love. You love to see it. I'm a big Bond fan, so that made me happy. Thanks for joining me on today's show, everybody. So glad to be together. If you've not subscribed to Locked On Tar Heels on video and audio, do that right now so you don't miss a second of the show. If you've not joined the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, we'd love to have you in there. It's free to join. Links in the show notes. We're having great conversations every day. And if you want to go next level with the show, join the Locked On Tar Heels Insiders. That link is also in the show notes. Would love to see you there. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll be back with you tomorrow. Coach Rob will be with me with a camp preview. Going to be a lot of fun. Until then, though, peace.